And what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. I'm your host, Alex Daniels. All right, we've got a packed one this week. We're talking last lap passes at Kansas, overtime chaos. The driver is putting together a season we haven't seen since the late 80s. We've got a sprint car race that turned into an all-out war on the bull ring, an IndyCar masterclass at Long Beach, and a veteran finally breaking through in high-limit racing. Plus, we're going to get into the Indy 500s. We're one car away from a full field of 33. There's a rumor floating around that could shake up for that final spot. This is Historic Hot Laps. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get into our first recap of the episode. And honestly, this one delivered exactly what you'd expect from Long Beach. Tight walls, traffic everywhere, strategy chaos, and a finish that came down to less than a second. This was round 3 of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season, and the first true sprint race of the year, just 100 minutes on one of the most unforgiving street circuits in North America, and right from the start, this race had a classic Long Beach feel. The overall win went to the number 93 Acura Meyer Shank Racing Acura ARX 06, driven by Nick Yaloli and Van Zerdonte, and this one means a lot. Not just a win, this was Acura's first overall victory at Long Beach in the modern IMSA era, despite being the title sponsor of the race since 2019. So there's a little bit of home race redemption baked into this result. Now on paper it looks straightforward, pole, control the race, take the win, but that's not how it played out. Yaloli started from pole and led early, but lost the lead about 13 laps in while dealing with GT traffic, something that becomes a huge factor at Long Beach. That's really where the race was decided. Instead of reacting immediately, the number 93 team stretched their first stint longer than their competitors. That strategy put them in a position when one of the race's multiple full course cautions came out. At just the right time, they cycled back to lead, and from there it was all about defense. Van der Zante took over and held off a charging Cadillac in the closing laps, with Frederik Vesti closing within tenths. The final margin was 0.8 seconds. And if you know Long Beach, you know it's basically bumper to bumper. Van der Zante afterward basically said it all. Tires were gone, Cadillac was faster, and he was just hanging on. But this is where the experience matters. He's now won multiple times on street circuits, including Long Beach 3 times in recent years, and the ability to manage traffic and pressure made the difference late. Right behind them, you had the number 31 Cadillac wheel-in entry with Vesti and Aiken, as we were just talking about. P3 goes to the Porsche Penske group in that number 6 car, with Vanthor and Estre in it. The Porsche result was actually bigger than it looks. The number 6 car had one of the most consistent entries this season, and the podiums keep the Porsche camp firmly in the championship fight. It's also worth noting the sister number 7 Porsche finished right behind in 4th, continuing a strong points run. Jumping over to the GTD class, the win went to the number 12 Vassar Sullivan Racing Lexus, driven by Aaron Tellitz and Benjamin Peterson. And this was just another drought breaker. The win snapped a 2-year winless streak at Long Beach for Lexus. And there's a cool historical tie in here. It's been 30 years since team co-owner Jimmy Vassar won at Long Beach back in 1996. The key moment in GTD came on the restart. Tellitz made a decisive move for the lead, and about 40 minutes to go, getting the number 36 DX DT Corvette, which had dominated earlier with Robert Wickens behind the wheel. Wickens' stint is still one of the best stories of the race. Coming back and immediately leading from the pole in his class, he controlled the early portion, and by all accounts it looked like a fairy tale run for him. But Long Beach doesn't hand out easy endings. Traffic, pit cycles, and one rough sequence through the middle sector dropped that Corvette back through the field in a matter of corners. That's how fast things can unravel on a street course, right? So going to the GTD podium, you had the Lexus in first place, as we talked about. The number 96 BMW with Foley and Gallagher from Turner Motorsport was in P2, and P3 Ferrari entries from Conquest and Inception battling up in that mix. One of the storylines here is that number 89 Lexus. That car had the pace to win. It actually charged from the back after a qualifying penalty, made it all the way to lead at one point, but strategy forced them to pit lane to meet driver time requirements, and they ended up finishing 6th. That's one of those what could have been results. So the race had full course cautions 5 times, constant traffic issues, and strategy playing just as big of a role as outright pace. And honestly, that's Long Beach in a nutshell when it comes to sports cars. It's not always about who's fastest. It's about who survives, who times it right, and who can manage chaos without making a mistake. Acura finally gets its breakthrough win at its home race. Lexus ends the drought, and the championship picture is still wide open after 3 rounds. All right, now let's get into IndyCar at Long Beach, because we know we had the doubleheader weekend, if you will, and this was a masterclass in execution, because on paper, it looks pretty comfortable, but the race was won on pit road. No doubt anybody can guess, the win went to Alex Palou driving the number 10 for Chip Ganassi Racing, and this was pretty clinical. Palou led 32 of 90 laps, but more importantly, he made the move that decided the race when it counted, and the final margin was 4.1 seconds, but it wasn't that simple just getting there. So let's talk about how he won the race, because this race really belonged to Felix Rosenqvist early on. He started on pole and controlled things. He led a race-high 51 laps, clean air, strong pace. It looked like his race to lose. But Long Beach always comes down to timing. The turning point came during the final round of pit stops. Palou's crew executed perfectly, got him out ahead of Rosenqvist, and that was it. Track position at Long Beach is everything. Once Palou had clean air, he checked out. After a late restart with just under 30 laps to go, Palou nailed it. No wheel spin, no hesitation, just a clean launch and immediate control. Behind him, Rosenqvist had the pressure because now it wasn't just about chasing the win. It was about holding off a charging Scott Dixon. Dixon, on a slightly different tire strategy, was right there but couldn't quite get into position to make the move. Up front, Palou just kept stretching that gap. By 10 laps to go, he was over 5 seconds clear, and the race is over at that point. We all know that. So how it finished out is just as we described. Alex Palou, number 1, Felix Rosenqvist coming up in second, and Scott Dixon rounding out the podium. This was also a Honda sweep of the podium, which is a big statement at a track like Long Beach. Again, that tie to Acura, the whole thing. You also had Kyle Kirkwood coming in 4th. Pato O'Ward gets your first Chevy finish in 5th. Scott McLaughlin behind him. David Malukas in 7th. Graham Rahal with a strong showing in 8th. Alexander Rossi, who was a huge mover, starting out in 18th and finishing inside the top 10 at 9th. And then Kiffin Simpson rounding out that top 10. That Rossi run from 18th to 9th is definitely one to note. Some other key moments and a couple storylines from this race. Joseph Newgarden went off strategy early with a 3-stop call trying to flip track position, but it ultimately didn't pay off. There for a little bit, it was looking pretty good, but once Palou takes over, it's all over after that, right? And the caution didn't help him out any either. So Marcus Ericsson was the race's only retirement after a hybrid system issue, and that one's a super bummer for that team because they're having a pretty good start to the year overall. Will Power was hit with a drive-through penalty after a pit lane contact with a crew member. So even though the finish looked clean, there was a lot going on under the surface. But the big picture here is this race came down to one thing, and that was execution under pressure. Rosenqvist had the speed and led the most of the race, but Palou and Ganassi won where it counts, and that's on pit road with a perfect stop at exactly the right time. Once he got the lead, he was gone. This is what championship form looks like. No mistakes, smart strategy, flawless execution, and now Alex Palou adds Long Beach to his resume in a big way. And honestly, that's all we can say about it. So that's your IndyCar recap from Long Beach. We've also got some testing coming up in the next couple weeks, and then we got the month of May ahead of us. We all know what that means. Right, now it's time to get into the Kansas 300, and this one had a little bit of everything. Strategy, big hits early, and late race battles between the two drivers who clearly weren't going to give each other an inch. O'Reilly Series racing at Kansas is always fun to watch. This time the win goes to Taylor Gray, picking up his second career O'Reilly Series victory, and this wasn't a dominant, cruise-to-the-finish kind of win. This was earned the hard way. Gray led 48 laps, but the real story is how the race played out late. Over the final 15 laps, it turned into a straight-up duel between Gray and Sheldon Creed, and not just racing, but chess match-style racing. Gray got the advantage through the pit strategy during the long green flag run. His crew chief made a call to pit earlier than the leaders, doing the old undercut move, and when everything cycled through, Gray came out track position, and at Kansas, that matters more than you know. From there, it was all about the defense. Sheldon Creed, though, wasn't going away easy. He closed in over the final run, got within striking distance, and for a stretch there, it felt like he had the faster car. But Gray didn't crack. He hits his marks, manages the dirty air, and forced Creed to try and make something happen instead of handing him an opportunity. And at the line, we had less than a second. You had 0.718 seconds ahead, and that might not sound razor thin, but at Kansas, that pressure for the entire final run is insane. I can't even say what it is at that point, but here's another added layer. These two already had a history earlier this season, so this isn't just a win thing. This was about settling something on the track, but there's also something extra on the line for Sheldon Creed. With the runner-up finish, he automatically secured the Dash for Cash bonus, and both he and Gray move on to Talladega along with Justin Allgaier and Jesse Love. So even without the win, Creed still walks away with something big. I believe it was a $100,000 payday for that one, so pretty awesome. But here's how the field shook out. Taylor Gray and Sheldon Creed up front, like we talked about. Justin Allgaier comes in third. Jesse Love in fourth. Brent Cruz in fifth, which was a great run for that team. Rounding out the top 10, you had William Byron jumping in from the Cup Series, Cole Custer jumping in from the Cup Series, Brandon Jones, despite a late pit road penalty, comes in at 8th, Sam Mayer in 9th, and Ryan Sieg in 10th. That's a pretty stacked top 10. You have a mix of veterans, young talent, Cup crossover drivers, all of it. But this race didn't take long to get wild. Lap 2, we're barely underway. We get one of the biggest incidents of the night, and probably of the season so far. Carson Kvapil gets in the wall after contact, then gets hit again, and the car goes airborne. Flips multiple times down the backstretch. It's one of those moments where everything just stops for a second. Good news, obviously, Kvapil climbed out under his own power and later checked and released, but that sets the tone early that Kansas can bite. Then later in stage 1, you had more trouble with Austin Hill after a side draft battle with Jesse Love, his teammate, sliding back into traffic and collecting William Sawalich. That ended Sawalich's night early and left Hill pretty frustrated post-race. So even though the finish looked clean, getting there was anything but that. The big takeaways on this one, this race really came down to one thing, and that was execution. Taylor Gray and the team made the right call on pit strategy, got the track position, and then didn't give it away. Sheldon Creed had the speed, he had the pressure, and he even grabbed the bonus, but just couldn't quite get to where when it counted. And that's Kansas. It rewards the patience, timing, and discipline just as much as outright speed. Gray gets his second career win, stays right in the fight, and heading into Talladega, this series is starting to heat up in such a big way. Can't wait to see what happens in Talladega. Well, let's close out the weekend with the NASCAR Cup Series at Kansas, and this one's delivered a finish people are going to be talking about for a while, because we're not just talking about a race win, we're talking about a season that's starting to feel historic. Disclaimer alert, we're going to cover the results as is. A lot of people are hitting the online threads with a conspiracy of them having more horsepower in this car and has to do with the lawsuit, but the win goes to Tyler Reddick, driving the number 45 for 23XI Racing, and this is pretty massive. Reddick picks up his 5th win in the first 9 races of the 2026 season. That hasn't been done since Dale Earnhardt did it in 1987, and you're also talking about names like Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough on that list. That's company he's in right now. Yeah, now here's the thing. This wasn't a dominant race from start to finish. This race had a ton of layers to it. Reddick started on the pole, but early on it looked like he was going to be a battle between Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. Hamlin took control early and won stage 1. Larson came right back and won stage 2, continuing his dominance at Kansas. And for most of the race, it felt like one of those two was going to close it out. But Reddick never really went away. He stayed right there. He kept the car in the window. He retook the lead late on lap 258 of 267, and then everything changed. You had a late caution, an overtime restart, and this is where it gets wild. From front row is Reddick and Hamlin. Hamlin gets the jump, clears into turn 1, but from third, Larson makes a huge move on the inside, clears both of them, takes the white flag. At that point, it looks like it's over. Larson's about to win his 3rd straight Kansas Spring race, but Reddick had something left. He tracks Larson down on the backstretch, gets a run, and sends it in the inside between turns 3 and 4, and he makes the pass stick and holds out the line by 0.1 second. And that is a statement move. So here's how the top 5 shook out. You had Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe comes up in 3rd, Denny Hamlin slid back to 4th during all that, and Bubba Wallace in 5th. And you're talking 4 out of the 5 being Toyotas. That's dominance from the manufacturer standpoint, right? Toyota at Kansas has got it figured out. Rounding out the top 10, you had Keselowski in 6th, Byron in 7th, Chase Elliott in 8th, Ty Gibbs in 9th, and Chris Buescher in 10th. Solid mix of contenders and consistent point stays across the board for all. This race isn't just about Kansas, though. This is about Tyler Reddick's season. 5 wins in 9 races, 4 of those wins coming from the pole. That's not just speed, that's execution, that's closing races, and that's exactly what he did here. Even with Larson making that aggressive move on the restart, Reddick didn't panic. He set it up, got the run, and finished when it mattered most. It's starting to feel like a defining season for him. Reddick is qualifying up front, he's leading laps, he's winning races in multiple ways, and now he's beating the best in the sport in clutch moments. This wasn't just another win, this was definitely a statement. And right now, Tyler Reddick is the driver everyone else is chasing. I understand from the outside perspective, and those that are not a fan of all of this, how they think this might be a rigged system and this and that, but I mean, honestly, he's not winning by insane margins. We're talking 0.1 seconds. To me, that doesn't feel like it's been set up by NASCAR. And the caution was necessary considering the hazard that was there. So, I don't know, the late restart always gets people shaken up, gets them frazzled a little bit. The online stuff goes crazy. We've heard some of the opinions. We'd love to hear more. We're not picking a side here. We're just telling it like it is. It's definitely a statement regardless. Moving over to the dirt world, we had the World of Outlaws deliver one of the wildest races of the weekend, and honestly, that is exactly what you expect from the bull ring at Tri-State. Close quarters, constant traffic, and a finish that turned out into an all-out fight. The win goes to Tyler Courtney, and this one didn't come easy. Courtney, in the Clausen Marshall number 7 BC, picks up his 6th career World of Outlaws victory and his 2nd win at Tri-State Speedway. But the way he got it, that's the real story. Courtney started 4th, and early on he wasted no time getting to the front. On an early restart, he powered past Sheldon Hodenschild to take the lead, and for a while it looked like he might just drive away. Clean air, smooth laps, total control, but then the hottest driver in the series showed up. Buddy Kofoid, going for his 4th straight win, had dropped back as far as 10th early in the race, but then something clicked, and by lap 14 he was 3rd. 5 laps later he was 2nd, and now he's hunting down Courtney. What followed one of the best battles you'll see all year. You had slide jobs, crossovers, traffic everywhere. Kofoid takes the lead. Courtney takes it back. They're trading blows, lap after lap, both running right on the edge. But coming to the white flag, Courtney has the lead. Kofoid gets a run down the backstretch, dives in, they make contact, and Kofoid spins just like that, and it's over. From a shot at 4 straight wins to a 19th place finish, and that's honestly just sprint car racing, right? But even after that, it wasn't done. A late caution sets up a green-white checker, and now Courtney has to deal with another hungry driver, Emerson Axum. Axum, another Indiana native, is right there looking for his first big breakthrough. But Courtney nails a restart, gets clear, and closes it out. So how it all finished, you had Tyler Courtney in first, Emerson Axum, first podium of the season, getting 2nd place there, Sheldon Hodenschild in 3rd, Brady Bacon, hard charger, started out in 20th, ends up P4, and Garrett Williamson in 5th. And that's a strong mix of veterans and young talent right there. Other notable things, though, is Kofoid ends up 19th after leading laps and battling for the win. We talked about that. That result widens the points gap to David Gravel, who continues to lead the championship. Courtney also logged the fastest lap of the race, and that run from Brady Bacon to go 20th to 4th, that's one of the drives of the night for sure. This race was everything the World of Outlaws does best. There's tight racing, high stakes, no room for mistakes. Kofoid had the speed to keep this win streak alive, but the moment with a little bit of contact and it's gone. Courtney, he capitalized, he stayed aggressive, he survived the battle, he won the race. This wasn't just a win, it was a fight, and Tyler Courtney came out on top. Let's stay on the dirt side of things for a little bit here, because the High Limit Racing Series gave us a really cool story this past weekend at the Diamond Classic. This one wasn't about a last lap slider or late race chaos or any of that. This was about a veteran finally breaking through for your feature win. You had Kerry Madsen take the win, and this is one of those wins that just means something. At 55 years old, Madsen picks up his first career high limit victory and his 30th start with the series. Think about that for a second. A guy who's already built a career with 29 World of Outlaws wins, still grinding it out, still showing up, and now adding another major win to the resume. And he didn't luck into this one. He definitely earned it. Madsen set the tone early by winning the dash, which put him on the pole for the 30-lap feature, and from there it was total control. He led all 30 laps. But don't let that fool you. That wasn't easy. Lucas Oil Speedway is a place where traffic comes into play quite quickly, and navigating slower cars can make or break your race. Madsen handled it perfectly. He hit his marks, stayed smooth through traffic, and never gave the guys behind him a real opening, and that's the experience and that's the racecraft. Finishing second was Cy Lynch. This was another great story. Lynch ties his career best finish in the High Limit Series, and he's been knocking at the door of his first national win. 5 career podiums now, and you get the feeling it's coming sooner rather than later. Right behind him in third was Tanner Holmes. That's his 2nd career High Limit podium. He's quietly building consistency this season. He also picked up Rookie of the Race honors on that night, which tells you everything about the kind of run that he had. You also had Dason Pursley, who drives for Casey Kane, come in 4th, and Hank Davis come in 5th. That's a solid mix of veterans and rising talent. You also had a few other guys in the back. You had Rico Abreu in 6th, Tyler Courtney in 7th, Giovanni Celsi in 8th, Brent Marks in 9th, and Justin Peck in 10th. Notably, Abreu and Courtney both charged forward from the outside of the top 10 to get there, which tells you how much movement there was at the field behind the leader. Other notables from that night, Aaron Rutzel set the quick time overall in the hot laps. Madsen also logged the fastest lap of the race, and Jace Park picked up a hard charger moving from 23rd to 13th. So Another key stat we got to mention real quick is Madsen becomes the oldest winner in high limit racing history, passing Brad Sweet. This race really comes down to one word: experience. Kerry Madsen didn't just win, he controlled the race, he managed traffic and executed perfectly from start to finish. No mistakes, no openings, and in a series as competitive as high limit, that's very rare. It is also a reminder that even in a field full of rising stars, a veteran with the right night can still beat all of them. So Madsen gets his high limit win, adds another chapter to an already impressive career, and becomes the 25th different winner in series history. Not a bad night at all. And that's high limit racing from the Diamond Classic. All right, let's jump into news and rumors this week. We've got some big stuff to talk about here because we're officially into that time of year where everyone starts asking, are we getting a full field of 33 for the Indy 500? And right now we're close. As of recording this, we're sitting at 32 confirmed entries for the 2026 Indy 500, and that includes 25 full-time IndyCar entries and 7 Indy-only entries. That's actually a really healthy number at this stage because for a while there, it wasn't guaranteed we were even going to get to 33. Our biggest development here is Prema Racing pulling out of the 500. They had engine leases lined up. With the ownership situation going sideways, they've officially stepped away from competing at Indy this year. Here's where it gets interesting. That decision freed up a Chevy engine lease, and that's what's keeping the dream of a full 33-car field alive. That engine is now expected to go forward, a third car for AJ Foyt Racing, alongside the confirmed entry of Jacob Abel with Abel Motorsports. So realistically, we're one driver announcement away from locking in a full grid. So here's the rumor mill. Now, one name keeps coming up for this AJ Foyt entry, and that is Katherine Legge. She last ran the Indy 500 in 2024 and has a ton of experience across IndyCar, IMSA, and endurance racing. Right now, she's being heavily linked to a potential third Foyt entry. Other names also in the mix include Stefan Wilson and Devlin DeFrancesco, but Legge feels like the one gaining the most traction. And honestly, from a storyline standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Veteran presence, proven at Indy, and it would add another experienced name to the field that's already stacked. So let's talk about the confirmed Indy-only entries so far. Quick run through here. Ed Carpenter for his own team, Ed Carpenter Racing. You got Elio Castroneves, again with his ownership group at Meyershank Racing. Connor Daly, we know, is going to drive for Dreyer and the Reinbold. You're also going to have him teaming up with Jack Harvey, who's also in the other Dreyer Reinbold car. Ryan Hunter-Reay announced earlier this year he's going to be sitting in that Arrow McLaren extra entry. Takuma Sato is going to be running for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing once again, which that one's going to be wild to watch. And then Jacob Abel this week announced confirmation that they are going to run with that engine lease. That's a really solid group of experienced Indy drivers right there. You also have your normal full field snapshot of who to watch. You've got Joseph Newgarden, Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, Pato Award, Will Power, Kyle Kirkwood, Marcus Ericsson, plus returning winners like Castroneves and Hunter-Reay, and even crossover names like Mick Schumacher in the field. I mean, it's going to be pretty wild to watch this one. So just a couple reminders. This year, you're going to have the Universal Aero kit, just like always. All teams are going to be still running the same Dallara DW12 chassis. You've got the hybrid powertrains for the second year at Indy, so a lot less learning curve for these guys with the higher speeds and higher loads on that car. It changes your balance, everything else, right? Honda versus Chevy engine battle, Firestones across the field like always. So while the car's spec, strategy, and execution are going to matter more than ever, and please, when we say spec, I mean it's the same chassis. Obviously, there's a lot of fine-tuning you can do with these things. Big picture for us on this one. Right now, we're one announcement away from a 33-car field for the Indy 500 in 2026. If that third Foyt car gets confirmed, and especially if it's Katherine Legge, we're looking at a huge story there. So let's send out all the good wishes, all the good vibes, everything we need to try to get that last entry to at least have a full field. If we could get one more and have a bump day, that would be great. I wouldn't put money on it at this point. The Vegas odds aren't good on a 34-car field, but 33 cars still gives us a full race, gives us the tradition, so fingers crossed we get there. All right, let's wrap things up this week by digging a little deeper in a history moment here. One of NASCAR's most respected under-the-radar careers, and that's Jimmy Hensley. Now, when we talk about Hensley, we're talking about a driver who came up from the purest version of stock car racing, born in Ridgeway, Virginia in 1945. He grew up in the heart of short track country. This wasn't a pipeline system. There were no driver development deals waiting for him. If you wanted to race, you had to figure it out yourself, and that's exactly what he did. Hensley built his name on short tracks across Virginia and the Southeast, running late models and earning a reputation as a thinking driver, not overly aggressive, not flashy, just incredibly efficient. He understood tire wear, he understood track position, and patience long before those became buzzwords for drivers. By the time he made it into NASCAR's national scene, he was already a seasoned racer. Now, when he got into what was then the Busch Series, he quickly became one of those guys team owners love to have behind the wheel. Over his Busch Series career, he had 3 wins, 72 top 5s, 123 top 10s, but again, those numbers don't fully explain it. Hensley spent time driving a mix of independent and mid-level teams, including rides with operations like a family-owned Hensley team and other smaller organizations that relied on experience more than funding. These weren't powerhouse teams. These were groups fighting week to week just to stay competitive, and Hensley elevated them. His 1990 season really stands out, finishing 3rd in the championship. He went toe-to-toe with some of the best Busch Series regulars of that era. What makes that run impressive is consistency. He wasn't dominating races. He was always there, top 10s, top 5s, staying out of trouble and capitalizing late. And that's how you win over a garage. Now let's move into the Cup Series side of his career, because that's where the what-if conversation really starts. Hensley made over 160 Cup starts, driving for several teams over the years, including smaller operations like Means Racing and Henley Gray Racing. If you know anything about NASCAR in that era, you know exactly what it means. Those teams weren't showing up with brand new chassis every week. They weren't unloading with the speed of a Hendrick Motorsports or Richard Childress Racing. A lot of times they were just trying to qualify and survive, and Hensley became the perfect driver for that environment. He'd take care of equipment, avoid unnecessary risks, and quietly move forward while faster cars burned themselves up, and that's how he managed to pull out solid finishes, including a top 5 and multiple top 10s, despite rarely having the top-tier speed you need. There's a type of respect that comes with that. Drivers knew he wouldn't wreck you, owners knew he wouldn't tear up their car, and crew chiefs knew he'd give up constant feedback. One story that gets passed around from that era is how Hensley approached long races. While others would push hard early, he'd settle into a rhythm, saving tires and brakes. By the final third of the race, when others were slipping and sliding, he'd still have quite a bit left in the tank. It wasn't dramatic, but it worked. Another thing that stands out about Hensley is how long he stayed competitive. He raced well into his late 40s and early 50s, which in the 1980s and 90s NASCAR world says a lot. This was a physical, demanding time in the sport. No cooling systems like today, heavier cars, longer races. He's still out there running full schedules and holding his own. And here's where the what-if really kicks in. Hensley is often mentioned alongside drivers who never quite got the one big break. You put him in a full-time ride with a top organization, something like a Hendrick or Childress level team of that era, and it's very reasonable to think that his career numbers will look completely different. You'd have more wins, more poles, maybe even some championship runs, because the skill was there. He proved it every time he performed in the equipment he was given, and after stepping away from full-time driving, Hensley stayed connected to racing, like so many lifers do. Once racing gets in your blood, you don't really leave, and that's the perfect way to sum up his career. Jimmy Hensley wasn't just a driver chasing trophies. He was a racer, the kind of guy who built his career on hard tracks, long nights, and consistency, the kind of driver other drivers respected, even if the spotlight didn't always find him. So when we talk about NASCAR history, it's easy to focus on championships and superstars, but the sport is built just as much on guys like Jimmy Hensley, drivers who showed up every week, made the most of what they had, and earned every bit of the respect the hard way, and that's exactly why his story is worth telling. And that's going to do it for us this week. I know the history was a little short on this one, but we had to profile Jimmy Hensley and all he'd done. Another week out, another stretch of races that delivered across the board, from Long Beach to Kansas to the dirt-studded, the Outlaws, High Limit, all of it. Feels like we're just getting started this year. Spring is sprung. We've got races on the board. Just feels like things are heating up. IndyCar starting to take shape. Indy 500 month is right around the corner, which means things are going to get serious, especially for us. That's our favorite time of year. If you've been riding with us, we definitely appreciate it. And if you're new here, this is what we do. We talk about racing, we talk about stories, we keep up with everything happening across motorsports and stuff that happened in the past. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss the next episode, especially with Indy coming up. We'll be back next week as always. Until then, enjoy the racing, stay safe, and thanks for tuning in.